Alright, let's see if we can't get Mama Cat to move. And we are going to do something different. Come on now, Mama Cat, move. Move it. Come on, over here. Come on. Alrighty. So, I want to add more to this. So I can get it done a little bit quicker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these two or four right in the middle. I'm going to put a glass here and a glass here. Alright, the first one I'm going to put right here on this one. And I am going to take and just this one by itself, and I'm going to cut it. Well, come on. Okay, and then I'm going to cut this one, so that way we can make these a little bit bigger. Come on. We're going to add to it. Oh. There we go. Now, hold on a minute. Alrighty, now we're going to go to this one, and we're going to do the same identical thing.
I mean, there is nothing honest about the way that the government and Democrats force this thing down this community's throat. And you can see by the shots there, these are very idyllic farms. There's horse farms there, there's cattle farms. I mean, it is really beautiful there. And to plop this very toxic battery factory in the middle of all this, I tell you, it just makes no sense whatsoever. And they wouldn't have to do it if they didn't mandate, they being the Democrats, mandate that you have to drive an electric vehicle.
But here is truly the most wonderful and exciting thing I've ever had the chance to talk about. It's the Westinghouse Total Electric Home. A home where electricity does everything. Heats, cools, illuminates, launders, preserves and prepares foods, entertains. It even lights a path to the front door with rayescent strip lighting. As visitors approach, more lights go on automatically to say a cheery welcome. Then, when they arrive at the door, a television camera takes their picture to tell the hostess her guests have arrived. When you step inside the Total Electric Home, you step into an entirely new concept in living.
Fascinatingly, an older article from circa 1978 out of Asheville, North Carolina, touted lithium as a, quote, miracle element and argued that it was going to be the basis of a new paradigm of energy. H.E. Ullin, president of the Lithium Corporation of America, based there in Gastonia, North Carolina, stated, "We are not running out of energy. We're just in a transitory period. There's a great new world just around the corner. We are approaching an era where we will no longer need oil and coal for energy. These will be freed for other uses, and for energy, we will use lithium." And he claimed that 1 pound of lithium contains the same energy as 27,000 barrels of oil. Among a host of applications in production, lithium is used in batteries, notes this 1978 article. Therein lies its great value for the future. In the future, automobiles will be powered with rechargeable lithium batteries. In tests, we have run a Ford Maverick 289 miles without recharging its lithium battery. This product is only 5 years from marketing. Without question, Ullin said, the lithium batteries that could be recharged 1,000 times will power the automobiles of the year 2000, 300 miles between charges. The life of such a battery will be 300,000 miles. They will produce no exhaust pollution. Our environment will be cleaner. This conception of electric vehicles based on lithium-ion batteries stated back in the 1970s is almost the same as the version the public has been offered in the present time. The cars of the 1970s were reportedly getting the same mileage range as electric cars today, at or around 300 miles. And supposedly, back in the 1970s, they were going to be ready for market within 5 years. Back when Elon Musk was still just a child. These things were supposedly ready for market then. So what stopped it? Why didn't it happen? At the moment, North Carolina imports all of its energy except for a little wood, but because of its lithium deposits, North Carolina will ultimately become the source of all energy used in the United States. That's what he said back in the 70s. So the plan for this technology has been underway for not quite half a century. It may have been plausibly conceived of even longer back than that as a byproduct of the nuclear industry, other advances in industrial chemistry that were taking place, but it's not being implemented until this time period. Among its many other uses, lithium was the source of power for the hydrogen bomb, according to the article. And as the article brags, all of this will come from right here in our own backyard. How great is North Carolina's supply? North Carolina produces 80% of the U.S. supply. The mine we're working in now has a 50-year supply, and we have other deposits within the state. They got other places in mind. Just where those are located may not currently be disclosed for a variety of reasons, but they're apparently there. Other deposits may plausibly be discovered in the near future. Again, the USGS is leading a discovery and survey process for new deposits nationwide, and North Carolina is undoubtedly a special place of emphasis for this search.
And if you look around where you live, you might be surprised or not to find something like this is cropping up in your own backyard. I mean, we We found out that officials and citizens have been attempting to fight off a lithium battery storage project in our own rural county here in central Texas just this past July. And the company came to the commissioner's court because they were actually seeking a property tax abatement, alleging this is going to create 200 jobs and everything. We had citizens getting up saying things like, I'm against battery storage facilities wherever they are. You know, are these batteries coming from China? We're a conservative county. We don't want it here. And we'll fight until there's no fight left. We had a guy stand up in our meeting and say, when are we going to stop trusting the government? This green energy stuff's a hoax. And how this isn't going to replace natural gas or nuclear resources. I mean, that's the kind of county I live in. But really it came down to one of our precinct commissioners saying we don't have the sufficient resources or ability to put out these fires. And that guy is actually a volunteer firefighter with the volunteer fire department. And this is one of the main central issues. It's these fires that can happen from these lithium-ion batteries.
A battery fire like this one starts in a single cell via a chemical process called thermal runaway. We actually have X-ray footage of this happening shot at thousands of frames per second. This is the top of a cell similar to this one. This is a pressure release valve, and right now it is rupturing, which should prevent an explosion by relieving the pressure, but watch this. Gas buildup pushes the internal components of the battery upward, blocking the valve until it fails and you get an explosion. You get a chain reaction that spreads to even more surrounding cells, and pretty soon you've got a massive battery fire.
Around 50 electric vehicles caught on fire in Normal, Illinois at a Rivian plant. And initial reports were stating the actual Rivian plant itself was on fire. But after further investigation, it was found that it wasn't actually the plant itself that was on fire. It was a number of vehicles in a parking area. Overall, about 50 vehicles were damaged.
They don't burn like normal fires do.
It's all science, but basically you're only actually carrying half of the energy in your car in fuel, and it takes quite a lot to ignite that. It needs a proper spark. You actually need to go in and set fire to the fuel. When it comes to electric cars, you're carrying all of the energy in the battery pack, like everything. You're not mixing anything else from the outside into it. So you're carrying this immense amount of energy around with you. And there are various things that can cause it to erupt. Obviously, if it gets punctured, if you're in an accident, there's a serious risk of it going off. But on top of that, the way that the energy gets released is really scary when you've got one of these big battery packs that catch on fire or that get punctured, etc.
And water is not very effective at putting them out.
Bloomfield Township Fire Chief John Leroy knows firsthand the problem.
We just know that it's going to need a lot more water, whereas opposed to in the past, a simple car fire, we could fight it with one tank of water on our truck. However, now the EVs, we're going to know we're going to need to hook to a fire hydrant to try to put it out.
Of course, our highways aren't lined with fire hydrants, which means simply letting the vehicle burn itself out.
So an EV fire, I learned, burns at roughly 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, while a gasoline-powered vehicle burns at around 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. While it takes 2,000 gallons of water to extinguish a burning gasoline-powered vehicle, putting out an EV fire can take 10 times more water.
This fire took 6,000 gallons of water to put out, and this one took almost 20,000.
Those fires proving very difficult to put out. So how much water would you put on a typical gas-powered car?
Sometimes we just take a tank of water on the engine, around 750 to 1,000 gallons.
How much on something
These,
like this?
we're doing 8,000 plus gallons of water, just constant flow, trying to cool them down and stop the batteries.
So like 10 to 12 times the amount of water is required to put a car out like this?
Easily.
So it takes way more water to put them out. Not only that, but lithium-ion batteries generate their own oxygen, causing the fire to burn a lot longer than other fires do. Not only that, but when these batteries get hot, they don't just catch on fire, they explode like a bomb.
It's a vehicle in a parking lot. At 12:10, they arrive. 12:16, they've got their hand lines stretched, they break out a window, they start spraying water inside the vehicle. But at this point in time, the vehicle's completely full of smoke. They can't see anything inside. They're not really sure what they're putting water on. At 12:19, they break out a second window. 1 minute later, It launches that removable roof up into the air.
In the video, a white color new energy vehicle that was charging suddenly exploded.
A neighbor's cell phone caught the moments a battery exploded in someone else's garage.
The Vincent Thomas Bridge could be closed for at least another 24 to 48 hours. This after a semi-truck carrying a load of lithium-ion batteries overturned and caught on fire.
Watch as the drone moves closer and then the trailer explodes. This is causing a massive traffic backup as trucks try to get out of the port. And that fire has now been burning for more than 6 hours.
I mean, you could see why they were using it to make bombs during the Cold War. But some say it's not actually the initial fiery explosion part that's the worst, but the vapor cloud explosion that happens, which is absolutely super toxic.
But believe it or not, this isn't the scariest thing that can occur when a lithium-ion battery degrades or is damaged. That would be a VCE, or vapor cloud explosion, as we shall see in this video.
Between 6 and 11% of those heavy metal nanoparticles. What we realized from our experiments in the literature, if you only partially charge a lithium-ion battery and you abuse it, it need not ignite. You can either delay ignition or it doesn't occur at all. Then the hazard flips from fire to explosion. From our research, we reckon it's between 500 and 6,000 litres per kilowatt hour of vapor cloud, not including the small droplets of solvent. You always get two forms of vapor cloud, heavier than air and lighter than air, and only one dominates, and we don't know how to predict this yet. Now you can see the heavier than air vapor cloud. Imagine that in the bedroom cupboard on the 3rd floor of a terraced house with a battery energy storage system next to the hot water tank. Lithium-ion batteries become unstable at about 70 degrees centigrade.
A burning shipping container full of lithium-ion batteries sent a noxious cloud into the East End air on Monday afternoon. Librado Gallardo works right across the street from the Port of Montreal, where the blaze raged for hours.
We couldn't breathe, very hard time to breathe.
According to the Montreal Fire Department, the fire began at 2:45 p.m. Monday. Some said the smoke smelled like burning plastic and made it impossible to breathe.
So for our little county, this company wants to put a lithium battery storage facility in a location that is A, prone to drought, and B, has a volunteer fire department. And I don't know if you're familiar with those kinds of rural areas, but when I was a kid, I lived in a small town where a house a block away from the volunteer fire department actually burned down because it's volunteers and they had to get there, and they didn't get there in time. And there's no shade on the volunteers, it's just that's how that works. They're volunteers. So our county is just basically the worst location ever for such a thing as this, right? If one of these things explodes here and the place catches on fire and basically has to just burn itself out because there's not enough water to put out the fire, and it won't matter anyway because water doesn't really do anything to a fire that's creating its own oxygen. The longer that goes on, the longer the potential for burning down the rest of the town and the county along with it.
Even though Helene is long gone from Florida, it is still wreaking havoc. Officials say salt water is causing electric vehicles to catch fire.
Water and the ion batteries do not mix, and they literally explode.
I don't know if you guys saw the video that happened during these hurricanes. There was a guy that somebody had a camera in their garage that was aimed at their electric vehicle, and the car still caught on fire and exploded and burned, even though the car itself was sitting in water, okay?
Salt water that is flooding can get into the battery and dry there. And once it dries, it creates what federal safety officials call bridges between cells. And that can lead to fires. And those fires can come anywhere from days to weeks later.
Are an increasing number of tow truck drivers and companies who are just refusing to tow these vehicles?
Yeah, pretty much so. I
Why
mean,
is
they're
that?
very dangerous cars to tow. They have a potential to catch fire at pretty much any time.
Storing flooded EVs is increasingly a problem.
This field has been specifically designated for electric vehicles that have been flooded out by Hurricane Ian. Every single one of them has to be spaced 50 feet apart in case they spontaneously burst into flames.
And this is the main reason the people in my county are fighting off this battery storage project. It isn't because of toxic fumes or potential groundwater pollution or environmental reasons. And I'm pretty sure that people would love to have more jobs in a very small rural area.
Super Ride's Car Restoration is open again, less than 24 hours after being evacuated, along with hundreds of other nearby businesses, when a lithium-ion battery fire erupted Thursday afternoon a few hundred yards away at the SDG&E storage yard. The reason for the evacuation? Toxic fumes coming from the burning batteries.
Schools canceled classes in Escondido today after that fire at a battery storage facility.
Now residents in the North County city are raising concerns about these sites as developers look to build another one not too far away.
But it's the very real potential that in the unlikely event that one of these EV batteries were to explode or catch fire or something in the facility catches fire, they simply don't have the natural resources and manpower to fight that fire. And it could definitely become very, very dangerous.
Fire officials say battery fires are difficult to fight since they can't spray water directly on the flames because of the chemicals inside the batteries.
So it's an issue. And that's before you get to the point where we have massive fires coming out of our factories all the time in this country. I don't know if you guys realize how many fires have happened in our factories in the last few years, but my friend Grace, who runs the channel Really Graceful here on YouTube, she did a series of reports on this, on all the factory fires a couple years ago, because these things happen all the time. I'll put a link below. You can go watch her videos. She was collecting these things just to show how often this happens. It's way more often than people realize. I mean, as we were working on this third section of this report, a shelter in place actually went out in Rogers, Arkansas at a recycling plant that went up in a nasty plume of toxic smoke. 2 people were killed and 35 more were sickened when hydrogen sulfide, which causes respiratory and neurological issues, got released from a Pemex facility near where Aaron's mom lives. She sent us a message on that, which is the second deadly incident at that place in recent months. It just came out that the creeks around East Palestine, Ohio, where the train derailment and subsequent purposeful detonation of the train cars happened, contaminated the creeks in the area so badly that workers became sick during the cleanup, and they hid that report from the public until just recently, despite residents' concerns over it, because they were also getting sick. And by the way, there's a class action lawsuit that's now offering those residents $25,000 to compensate them for any future illnesses they might get.
New at noon, good news for victims of the toxic train derailment in East Palestine. People living near the eastern Ohio town will get at least $25,000 for injuries sustained in the Norfolk Southern train derailment. This money is part of a $600 million class action settlement. Lawyers negotiated to have the estimated injury payments increased from the initial $10,000 offer. In order for people to receive an injury payment, they would have to give up rights to file claims against the railroad if they develop cancer or serious health issues later.
And a group of them have filed an appeal because they're all pretty sure that $25,000 is not going to cover whatever that's about to be. And so this is just another one of these catch-22s. We live in a country, okay, where the evidence for harm, the burden of proof for harm from chemicals that companies produce, for example, is placed on the average people, that live in the areas around these corporations, and they drink the water and maybe they get sick. Then they go get a test done and then they find out, oh, there's something in this water that's making me sick. Then they have to provide that data to the company. A lawsuit maybe happens, it gets drug out for years, eventually it gets settled with some settlement where they don't admit any culpability at all, and then maybe after that it gets regulated. Maybe it will get probably not. A lot of cases it doesn't.
I think protecting public water and the public health isn't really controversial, but how we get there is, industry's got a lot at stake here. So
we don't have anything like proactively regulating uncertain risks to public health in this country. We don't have it. All of the burden of proof and evidence of harm is placed on average people and not on the corporations that produce these chemicals and these dangerous toxins, okay? That is the country we currently live in.
In America, it falls to us, the ordinary people, to prove that these chemicals are toxic before the chemical is regulated by our government. That is simply backwards. Tens of thousands of chemicals on the market that we have no idea whether they are safe for consumption or not.
I mean, anyone with even the tiniest bit of common sense could see why that's a problem in like 2 seconds. That's easy math. It all needs to change. It's terrible. It's really bad. The way that this is set up is to protect corporations and not people, because they're people too, my friend. But we're supposed to trust that this is going to be fine to do just everywhere. All this mining. There are real concerns around our outdated mining and water laws as it is, before you add a bunch of new processes to it, new experimental processes and new types of mining processes to it.
They say energy transition projects are part of a false transition that continues the destruction of the environment by prioritizing the profit of multinational corporations over the needs of the population.
And in the end, the question is, have we learned anything by these Cold War and now Cold War 2.0 narratives about how we just have to do the weapons race or the brain race, or in places like Buncombe County, North Carolina, and thousands of other sites across the country where they're still trying to clean up the toxic waste that was left behind from all of these Cold War weapons factories like Chemtronics, which they openly admit that place, the groundwater is not even going to be clean until something like 2046. That's how toxic it is. You know, back then, caution was thrown to the wind because we had to win the race against Russia, right? And that narrative took precedence over everything, including logic, including common sense, which we all know isn't so common anymore these days. I mean, we still haven't cleaned up our mess from the Cold War in the 20th century. Now we're being told we have to win the race against China's world domination through rare earth minerals, and all I can say is I just hope we've learned something in the last century about the fog of war overriding our common sense. And in our rush to fix one problem, we're not creating an even bigger problem and just poisoning ourselves and destroying our environment all over again, this time in the name of saving it. That's what I'm saying. I just hope that's not what's actually going on here. And I guess I'll just wrap up this report by saying it's kind of impossible to find old clips these days the way Google has reconfigured its search and basically shut down the internet aside from official sources anymore. But it's burned into my brain. I will never forget back in the days when we were reporting on Janet Napolitano when she was Homeland Security Secretary. Towards the end of her tenure, she was going around talking about how vulnerable our aging electric grid was and how it could be the next big attack. She did this speaking engagement and it had a question and answer session at the end, and there was a guy on the panel sitting in the back, and it's the memory of this is burned into my brain matter, okay? He said something about how a lot of this new smart grid infrastructure that they want to put in and build in this country cannot be just slapped down and upgraded over the top of the old stuff. It won't work. It has to be built from the ground up. And we learned that ourselves the hard way when a smart meter got slapped on our house, which was built in the early 90s, and it was causing electrical issues. And when we finally got it removed, when we opted out and got them to come take it out, we were actually told we were lucky our house didn't burn down because the way this smart meter was installed on it was all janked up in the box. And it was wrong because the house itself was not built at a time that it was meant to accept one of these meters. So we know we're moving towards smart grid infrastructure all over the place. But some of this smart grid, some things can be upgraded, but other things have to be built new from the ground up. I think what frustrates me is the obvious debunking of straw men that they do in the wake of these events when people start to get conspiratorial about other things that could possibly be going on. Because you always see this in the mainstream media, and I'm going to explain to you right now how it works. They go find the most extreme form, first of all, of the claim, and then they take down each little tiny detail of the extreme form of the claim while sidestepping the entire substance of what the claim is based on altogether. And they take down the straw man, and then they act like it's all debunked. This one, for example, Asheville, North Carolina sits on top of billions of dollars of lithium. Well, we don't know what's under Asheville, North Carolina, actually. We don't. But Asheville, North Carolina is just one city in this entire geographical area the size of Belgium. So picking one large city and saying Asheville, North Carolina doesn't really mean a whole lot. Billions of dollars of lithium, they don't know that. Nobody knows that right now. Neither does the USGS, and that's why they're doing surveys in the area with new Earth MRI technology to look over 3,000 feet down below the ground to see what's under there, which they just announced. And there are people who are getting really mad, and they're saying, we already know where the lithium mines are in North Carolina. They're farther to the east, and we already know about that. No, we don't know about that. If everybody knew about what was in North Carolina, they wouldn't be running USGS geological surveys looking 3,000 plus feet below the ground with new technology trying to find new critical earth minerals. They wouldn't be doing it if they already knew what was there, obviously. So they are looking for these things, and they are looking for them in Western North Carolina as we speak before this happened. And the same month they announced they were going to be looking there is the same month that you had BlackRock, who's part of that minerals partnership, buy $200 million more in shares of Albemarle, which is reopening Kings Mountain lithium mine. And even back in the day, the people who were running those lithium mines back in the day said they didn't know where everything was that was possibly in the state, and that there was probably more stuff out there. And then he goes on to debunk the next part and say this is the outcome of a well-orchestrated man-made disaster. You know, they're creating hurricanes. I don't think I've ever seen anybody make the claim that they're creating from nothing hurricanes. I've seen other verbs when people are concerned about it. Words like seeded, words like steered. There are patents for things. There are all kinds of things. There's a lot of research and information out there of things that have been done. That is so on record. It's out there that the military was trying to do those exact things back during Project Storm Fury. But he says all of it like you're just a complete idiot if you think about the things that are going on in North Carolina right now and put two and two together and say to yourself, wait a minute, could there be something else happening here? I mean, it's not totally insane for people to be concerned about this. You can see why. I mean, if I lived there, I would be. But then again, anywhere in this country is up for grabs right now. They don't seem to care. They don't care if it's, Native American land. They don't care if it's BLM land. They don't care if it's sacred places like the Black Hills in South Dakota. I don't think they care right now about much. If they need to go get these minerals, they're going to go do it. They've declared national security, and this is what is up. I think it's free game. They're doing these flights everywhere. Because they're looking for it everywhere they can get it, everywhere they can find it right now. That's a fact. These are all facts. So I really wish people would stop treating these people like that. I mean, they've already been through enough. These people have been through hell. A lot of them are extremely concerned. And by the way, the county that Asheville's in wasn't on that list, but you know what county was on that list? Rutherford. They announced that they were going to be looking there. That's one of the counties on the list, and there are several other Western North Carolina counties also on that list. And even if one specific county or one specific geographical area wasn't on this particular announcement with this particular list, that doesn't mean anything because they're doing multiple flights over the same state in different places. These are just contracted flights, which means private equity firms like, just spitballing here, BlackRock could also be contracting with those flights to check out for themselves what's going on anytime they want, whenever. Let's stop pretending to be so naive, okay? Can we please look around? Look at what's going on in our society right now, the precipice of massive change that we're all standing on and all the crazy, crazy stuff that's happening. And then pretend like, don't worry, everything's fine. I'm sure it's fine. Like, come on. There's just no excuse to be that naive at this point in our history. There just really isn't. It's not insane for these people to be concerned about these things that are going on around them. We should all be concerned about everything that's happening right now in this freaking country around us and stop pretending like if we just ignore it, it's not happening. It's happening. These things are happening. And putting your head in the sand and just try to act like you can ignore it, it's not going to make it stop happening. Okay? I don't know who needs to hear that, but that is what is up.
The ongoing search for new rare earth minerals 3,000 feet below the ground to mine in North Carolina, a place which admittedly has a rare combination of minerals in the ground as it is, might be why so many people are concerned about their property following this rare once in a 1,000-year weather event that flooded the area out, pretty much destroyed it. And considering that much of that property was not covered by insurance when it was wiped out, it's going to be a major problem.
When they first moved in, the two were required to have flood insurance. But after 3 years, Libre, Pamela's husband, said the flood maps were redrawn and their home was no longer required to have it.
No longer included in the floodplain, the 100-year floodplain. There was mention of a 1,000-year floodplain. At any rate, the requirement from the bank was no longer mandatory to have the flood insurance. We're not wealthy people, so we opted out of that coverage.
But if it's $600 a month and you have a mortgage on top of that, it's just really hard to do.
To act like these people are crazy for having such a concern and wondering what else might be going on when these geological surveys are taking place and when it's a known hotbed for the most sought after mineral in the new paradigm for our country in the years just ahead. I mean, with all this going on, it just adds insult to injury to try to shame people out of that kind of talk or try to act like it couldn't be happening. It's just insulting as usual. This transition is going to be massive. It's got pros and cons. I'm not necessarily saying it shouldn't be done, but people should realize and consider and weigh the cost of this. Is this the best way to live? Is this the only way to live? Is this the only way to replace the whole oil and gas, fossil fuels paradigm with another paradigm that requires extensive mining and a lot of other potentially polluting processes? Just think about it. I didn't know a bunch of this stuff. I don't know if you did. Is the drastic reorganization of national priorities, akin in some ways to the Manhattan Project, is it worth it? Will this paradigm address the environmental problems at hand, much less the very human problems of people whose way of life is being impacted by the scope and scale of these fundamental historical projects? Skeptics are skeptical, cynics cynical, and realists feel like this might really be some bullshit.
This is a massive shift in our country to a whole new paradigm. And it's just weird that people aren't really talking about it in its practicality on the actual ground. We've all seen a few of the cars here and there, but this is a whole thing that's happening. And it just feels like people should realize this is what's going on so that it can be more widely discussed. And my friend Grace, she goes by really Graceful here on YouTube. She drove through the area herself because it's a place that she visits often, and she said it's so far beyond what is being reported in the media, how devastated these areas really are. And she told me that a mainstream media outlet contacted her trying to ask if they could use her footage for their report. And she said, "Why aren't you there? Why aren't you getting your own footage?" The people in North Carolina are still suffering. There are places that still don't have water or electricity, and they're running in things on mules now. Some of these videos that are coming out look like the 1860s. Like we just went back in time in a time machine. So it's going to get really cold there. I'm not sure how the winter is going to go for these people that are sleeping in tents, but I'm going to go ahead and place all the links below for people to still donate for helping these people. And it's not over for them. It's been weeks now, but it's only just begun.
All right, this is not a fun update, but I've been up there multiple times and I keep getting sick. This is just for the first responders out there. You have to wear a mask. But there's something that's causing me to get bronchitis, sinus infections. I feel like every time I go up, I come back and I'm sick. Now I'm on amoxicillin, inhalers. So I know it sucks to wear a mask. and it's hard to work in them, but I don't want to find out in like 5 years we shouldn't have been breathing that stuff.
We're at a state where we actually don't know what we're doing because we don't really have an option of moving right now, especially with the economy and inflation and everything. Definitely do not want to live here if they do come through. We don't want to raise our kids here and risk everything. And, so we don't really know what we want to do or what we're going to do.
You can have your cake and you can eat it. Make life sweet, it's hard to beat it. What a thrill to be so free when you live better electrically.